Speaking of Honnold and Jimmy Chin, we have Derek DeBruin here with us.
Excellent transition.
Basically the same.
It's like a stand-in.
I do what I can.
1-to-1 stand-in.
Derek DeBruin of Bear Isles Mountain Guiding and his epic Canadian fail.
We've been promoting that pretty well.
I thought about calling the show the epic Canadian fail with Derek DeBruin, but we'll save that for later. Okay, so you did have this this agenda, what do you call this?
A project, a goal, a climb we were trying to do.
And I mean, basically, you've trained for it your whole life because as soon as you started crawling, this is what you were thinking about. Is this?
Well, I've been thinking about this particular climb for about 4 years.
4 years,
and the last 6 months was just like explicitly dedicated to this route.
Like you started training 6 months, and you gave up some serious stuff, not just the alcohol, but sugar.
Yeah,
you
made
sugar,
some. I definitely it was a serious lifestyle change. And one part of it too is okay. Giving alcohol up to recovery. Now the sugar thing's a little bit more dubious, but part of it is just that having the discipline to do all that is really helpful, sort of mentally when you're going to go try and climb really difficult routes. Honnold will call it being quote on the program. You're getting on the program.
You were on the program for 6 months.
I was on the. I was training for 6 months. I was on the program fully for 3.
Okay, we had an ultra runner in the shop last night who gave a presentation, a vegan ultra runner. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't believe the amount of mileage he runs is Trevor Fuchs. He won the Wasatch 100 twice now. Is that something? Have you considered full vegan when you're on the program?
No,
for recovery or anything. No. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I find that I get I can get kind of anemic, and also just I don't know. I frequently get strapped for fat and protein. He
eats like a jar of peanut butter.
Yeah, and so I have. I don't know. I probably have 4 tablespoons of peanut butter a day, and then I have, multiple shots of olive oil. I mean, my smoothie in the morning has peanut butter and olive oil and yogurt, and there's all. And then at night, I'm usually eating probably 4 eggs. Is pretty normal. Just try and get good
cholesterol. Yeah.
Well,
no.
So you
I love eggs.
Yeah, eggs are fine. They've got a lot of good fats.
Yeah.
And so that's the trick is trying to sort of optimize that.
When I put them in my fitness program, it dings me on cholesterol.
Yeah, well, maybe just need a new app. But anyways, eggs used to be pretty vilified, and these days, I think it's okay to eat eggs.
Okay.
And so I hope so. I mean, I eat get more than a couple dozen a week.
So what was your goal?
Okay, so the goal was to climb this route called Infinite Patience.
Okay.
Which climbs the Emperor face of Mount Robson.
Okay, on a goal of 0 to 10 in alpine climbing, where are we here?
For me personally, it's a 10.
Yeah.
This is so it's the tallest peak in the Canadian Rockies. Absolute elevation is only 13 grand, so it's comparable to going to the Tetons. Mm-hmm. Which is nice because you don't have to have a month of acclimatizing.
And you start at what?
You start at 2,500 feet. So it's actually bottom to top. It's like Everest. It's the same vertical relief. It's just not that high to start. And then it's also technically demanding. It's challenging climbing. Stuff that folks might be sending up the crag is what you're trying to do middle of this route in the Alpine.
And the approach to it?
You got to hike in about 10 miles or so, and then you got to cross a river. Actually, the river crossing is probably the most challenging. That was really time consuming. It's because it's winter. You don't want to get wet.
But it wasn't winter. You were hoping you would beat the winter, right?
Yeah. So the trick of this route is it's called Infinite Patience because the first ascensionist, this guy named Barry Blanchard, who's a Canadian mountain guide and just an all around alpine badass and been all over the world climbing. He had it took him 3 attempts before he finally got it on the 4th.
Wow.
On this route.
And he's good.
Yeah, he's real good. And he's local. And so conditions are a big deal. And so what you want is that this route depends on having the Canadian Rockies in general tend to have pretty loose chaussee rock. So there's some routes that are really good to go in the summer. But by and large, anything that's kind of loose, you really want to have some ice in it that's frozen in. It's not as big a rockfall hazard, and then you can actually go ice climbing instead of having to go rock climbing and you cramp on the tools, which makes it's just harder and more tedious. And so the trick is to have just enough winter that there's ice on the route, but not so much winter that it's covered in a bunch of snow that's also going to slide on you. So if you get there in the first 1 or 2 storms, if you get your timing right, then you just nail it and you grab the ice. And if you don't get your timing right, then okay, not as big a deal. You just got to slog through a bunch of powder, which sucks because you're posting. That's not the end of the world. But 2 or 3 or 4 storms in, like once you get a few dumps there and any wind happens, then what you have is like this giant pile of powdery junk on the bottom. You put some wind slab on top of it, and when you go to try to climb that, it just, avalanches on you, and then you just fall down a 6,000-foot face.
And you're not local. I mean, you can't just like, oh, we hit it right this year, let's buzz up there. You've got to plan this in advance. And
right. So we had this sort of trip planned out. We had gave ourselves 16 days, which is a pretty reasonable window for this kind of thing. The route should take about 3 days. Somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 4 day weather window. But you also need to have just not an early winter, basically. So winter came kind of early. It actually got climbed by a couple local crushers, Martin Van Haren.
Local Ogden or Utah?
No, local Canadian crushers. Yeah, up in Canmore. Martin Van Haren and Jaz Fotu sent it, which is pretty sweet. Good on you, boys. They nabbed it in September, early September, which is actually just usually it's 3 or 4 weeks earlier for this route.
And now, were you following them who are you following on Instagram or somewhere to get beta on it?
Oh, sure. So the trail you take to get up there is also just a really popular backpacking trail. In fact, most of the recreational activity at Mount Robson is hiking and backpacking. There's very few climbers, maybe 12 people with some of that peak a year, typically.
Wow.
And by any route. Mm-hmm. So when you go ask to go climb, they're like, oh yeah, there's no permits. You just do your thing, just whatever. Register if you want, because there's maybe 100 people try it or something, But backpacking up there is really popular, and it's really heavily regulated as a result. But it's a really nice trail, and they've got awesome tent pads everywhere, and there's cooking zones. They got bear boxes and stuff. It's it'd be a really sweet backpacking trip.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so everyone goes to take this really sweet backpacking trip, and when they get done, of course, the first thing they do is they get back to the Wi-Fi at the visitor center, and they post pictures. And so if you just search the hashtag Berg Lake Trail, it shows you all along the trail, and you just find the right part of the trail, and you're like, oh, cool, people took pictures of Mount Robson because it's right there, and it's gorgeous. And you're like, oh, by the way, that happens to just show the route that I'm trying to climb, so I can check conditions.
And then what's the account, the Instagram account that you've been? It's pretty cool, actually. You've been following up with stories from your trip and posting too. Is it your personal or is it Bear House?
It's my personal one.
Your personal?
Yeah, Derek M. DeBruin.
Okay, yeah, and so if you want to see the imagery. And some of the behind the scenes, the copy that goes along with it is good. It's longer, it's long form, almost like a blog form on those, and it does detail the trip. And so, because we can only chat so much about it here today, but you can go follow Derek on Instagram, and it's pretty cool on how you chronicled it.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I found myself definitely looking forward to the next
awesome.
post. So you ran into weather, essentially, is what happened, right?
Yeah, basically, one thing we couldn't control, winter showed up a month early, and so we were trying to figure out what we're going to do, what's going on, and finally we just started asking locals, and they're all like, oh yeah, winter came early this year, no one's going to climb any fall alpine stuff, just come to the gym or the crag with us.
But that didn't stop you. You kept going. But I think in one of those posts, you said you had met your criteria for stopping, which was a 3.
Oh yeah. So my general rule is if 3 things, when an accident happens, it's usually multiple things that occurred, not just one random event, right? Mm-hmm. So my rule is 3 things have gone wrong. That's usually a decent time to bail.
Specific 3 things or 3 things in general?
3 things in general, but they got to be sort of specific events that are alarm. They got to meet some. I don't have a great threshold for when they're they count, but
I forgot my Pop-Tarts or Snickers. That's for sure one.
For sure,
yeah,
one.
Absolutely. The proceeding. We were bivvied at the base of the route before our climb, and I was probably 0 Fahrenheit that night when we were bivvying out, and my partner had some intestinal distress. That evening, and so that was challenging. He did not sleep very well at all. And you're like, okay, that's not the end of the world on its own. But you're okay, that's kind of I'm a little worried now because we're also going to go try and camp 5,000 feet higher than next night. So
you want both partners feeling strong.
Yeah, exactly. Both partners feeling strong.
You got to know each other better than you probably.
Oh, this is great. We're so good. We're besties. And then. So we got, I don't know, a quarter up the vert of the route, which is just sort of the start of the hard climbing. And we set off a pocket avalanche. So not unsurprising, but still unnerving and problematic. Mm-hmm. And then above that, the thing that really did it was we were on the glacier. It's this hanging pocket glacier. So it's more just a jumbled mess of ice stuff that's just huge. And we're going to cross this one ice bridge onto the rock, which is this little ledge right below the start of the ice climbing. And it's going to be the first time we're rope up and actually have to climb hard. Mm-hmm. And my partner's, I don't know, 2 or 3 steps in front of me and sort of 1 step from getting onto the ice bridge. And he just takes a step forward and a hunk of ice the size of an SUV just like falls off the mountain right there in front of him, and where there was a bridge is now just a gaping void. And that was pretty alarming because typically when it's that cold and it's that winter, ice bridges don't just fall like that. Like if it had been like super heavy heat in August and the middle of the day or something, like okay, maybe we're gonna knock like some ice bridges are gonna fall apart. Like, but this is kind of a really unusual like collapse of ice that we're like the mountain is trying to tell us something. So
interesting.
Between the not feeling super great and the avalanche and then this ice bridge collapse, we're like, I think we came to Canada, we tried real hard, but proceeding more than this might just be dumb.
Yeah, but 6 months of training, you've had it on your mind for 4 years, you're there. It could just be coincidental that these things have happened, but yet you've got you still could climb the route and succeed in your goal. How do you mentally make that decision to say, no, we're out?
Because I want to live.
That's pretty disciplined of you.
Well, like, okay, so there's this old adage, you know, like summit or die, right?
That's Todd to the top
That's
right there,
life.
you know.
Just
exactly.
life.
Right.
Pretty much every step of my life. Exactly.
And so, like, well, it's really funny. There's like they had the big accident on K2 back in the 90s. Yeah. Was that in K2? I think so. I mean, anyway, you know, like
They made a movie about it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, one of the folks was like, you know, summit or die. Either way, I win. And anyway, he turns out that guy died in the accident. And I'm like, that's not really great. You know, like there's like, or like you've heard go big or go home. Go home. Mm-hmm. I prefer go big and go home. You know, like because you lose, right? Like the only thing better than climbing is like more climbing. So if you die climbing, then you can't do more climbing. So sorry.
Not to mention your family.
Right. Yes. You know, I have a wife and a son who depend on me. You know, like there's the rest of my family and my friends. Like there's no reason. Like so. Well, it's a funny thing. Like I've done some work with veterans and military groups, like with transition programs from like combat back to civilian life, and you like put them in high adventure situations to try and help them make that transition. Right. And one of the biggest differences is that if you're doing like high adrenaline, high adventure activity recreationally versus in combat, right? If you die in combat, that's glorified. But if you die climbing a mountain, that's just stupid.
Foolhardy, all the comments, yeah.
Exactly. And so regardless of your personal thoughts on that, it's like, you know, that's
pretty...
but
he died doing what he loves.
Right, exactly. And you know what's even better than dying doing what you love is like living and still getting to do what you love and also being with the people you love. And
you came back home and you did an epic home and you succeeded.
That's true. So I had trained really hard. So I was like, I got all these extra mitochondria. Like I want to do a thing.
Don't waste your mitochondria.
Exactly. So here in Ogden, you know, like we got like the 3 big peaks.
I want a t-shirt that says,
don't waste your mitochondria. Dude, we should make shirts. I'm on board. Hashtag tough or dumber. Well, anyway, so the 3 peaks you can see from town here, right? You got Ben Lomond, Lewis Peak, Mount Ogden. I mean, pretty much the first time I moved here, I was like, I'm sure I'm going to be hiking around all those and like sort of getting to know them really well. And at some point, like in the first season or two, I was like, it'd be cool to like run across them all one day.
Link them up.
Yeah, like just do them all in one go. But I was always training for some climbing objective, so I was never like going to go train for an ultra. I was like, one day when I like don't have anything else to train for, or like if I'm like maybe.
How much running did you do? Training for alpine, is that? I mean, it's not super running heavy,
so you do lots of carrying packs of pills, which is still reasonably applicable. Like this particular ultra was basically up,
similar.
Down, up, down, up, down, like over 3 mountains. And then there is a fair amount of trail running just to build aerobic base. So like I would regularly do like a half marathon loop up kind of like go up the Indian Trail to the Shack, then go up Hidden Valley, then down to Taylor's, then up Malin's, tag the summit, and then back all the way down to 22nd Street.
Which, that's no joke. That's pretty good. That's steep.
Yeah, it's like 6,000 feet of vert and like, I don't know, just under, it's like around 13-ish miles or something to do that. And that was, I probably did it like twice a month. That was like through the long run in the period. So, I mean, I was like just doing mountain half marathons, and I was like, well, that's not that crazy then to like go do like a mountain marathon, and it just happens that the 3 things I want to run are longer than a marathon, so I guess we'll just have to do it.
How long is that?
I don't actually know.
And you started in North Fork Park?
Started North Fork Park up by Cutler Ridge.
The Ben Lomond Trail?
Ben Lomond Trail to the summit, or to the saddle, up to tag the summit, back to saddle.
And you didn't go to Willard?
Did not go to Willard, It's just the 3. Because Willard you can only sort of see from town, and you definitely can't see it from my house. And so that was kind of like my initial criteria.
It is taller than Ben Lomond, which a lot of people don't know.
It is, but it's just like kind of off. It just gets blocked.
Can't see it,
you can't see it. So I was like, well, I'm running the Ogden skyline,
Okay.
So that was the deal. That was
so
like
Ben Lomond,
saddle down. Yeah, so to the saddle, down the Great Western to the North Ogden Divide, up the front of Lewis Peak.
Down. Oh, yep. Lewis Peak.
Yep.
Okay.
Up to, and you got to go tag the summit of Lewis Peak as well. It's not Lewis Peak. That point is not actually the highest point on the massif, but that is Lewis Peak proper. So you got to go touch it.
That's where the little thing is.
Yeah, exactly. So you go snag that, come back, and then down all the way to Pine View, the reservoir. Go across the dam.
Do some road running.
A little bit of road running across the dam, and that gets you to Icebox Canyon, Wheeler Creek zone, and you go up Wheeler Creek all the way towards Maples at Snow Basin. That takes you to Snow Basin. And then from there, I just went up the service roads more or less to the saddle at Mount Ogden, scrambled up to the tower, and then all the way down Buse Canyon.
Which ultra runners do, trail runners do. They link that and they do it. They typically don't do that in October, November.
It was October, yeah.
October.
Well, that's the other thing. Is like I know someone's done this and knows how long it actually is. It's somewhere between 45 to 50 miles. Like depends on which maps I'm looking at and like whose GPS you're believing. But like it's that was the other problem is like it snowed up in Canada in October, but it turns out that like sort of like southeast of Canada on that same friggin' like front is Utah. So it snowed here at the beginning of October as well. So when I came home, there was like a couple feet of snow up there in places. But I was like, well, I'll just give it a couple days. It'll melt a little because it was warm-ish.
Yeah. But on the backside, there was still snow, right?
No, yeah. I started in the snow immediately, and it was probably like 20 degrees. And so like I didn't really feel my toes for like the first, 3 or 4 hours.
And you were 99% self-supported, but you did need a new pair of shoes. Yeah,
so that was the other thing. Is the whole goal is to be self-supported. So the day before, I went up and I cached water at North Ogden Divide and at Pine View. I just put them in bladders. So that way I came by, I need more water.
They didn't freeze.
No, correct. I kind of buried them in the snow. And there's like a gallon of water in that bladder. So like even if I lost some, like if to freezing, it wouldn't all be frozen. And so then I would just put the water, reload the water, and then I could collapse the bladder and just take it with. I was about halfway up Snow Basin, maybe 2/3. And you don't ever use like a new pair of shoes for something like this, right? Because you don't want to have blisters on mile 3.
Right. So
I had this older pair, and they're still in pretty decent shape, but like they had a little hole in the side that I'd patched really nicely with some shoe glue and whatever. Like they were otherwise good to go. But as I was going up, like my right shoe, I not only had this old hole exploded open and gotten huge, but I had another small hole. The sole was starting to separate somehow. And the shoelace was snapped in like 3 places. So like it was just sort of held on by my trail gaiter, kind of. And that was the point at which I was like, this is ridiculous. So I called Susan, my wife, and was like, hey, we know lots of people. Surely someone can come just like meet me with a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And so finally, like the last 2.5 miles or so up in Buse Canyon, kind of right there where you get out of the canyon and like turn around.
Man, you're almost done at that point.
Yeah, it was 2.5 miles away, but then but Ben and Denver Botter, who I'm sure have been on the show at some point.
Ben was on last week.
Yeah,
last
right.
Week,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. I was like pretty sure I saw him recently on here. With Corey to talk about the bash. Anyway, they exactly. They hiked up and met me like about the last 2.5 miles and brought me new shoes.
And those last 2 miles were the best 2 miles.
No, they were terrible. Well, I was pretty destroyed.
Yeah.
And so I just had some, my IT band was really flaring up and it was just like,
that sucks. How was recovery?
But I had great friends, so that helped. They also brought me like, what did they bring? Cheese and wasabi peas.
Of course they did.
So that was
nice.
That was really good. So then and
The best cheese I've ever
Which I was thinking they should have brought you beer, but you drink.
Oh, he did bring me beer.
He did bring you a beer?
He did, but I was like,
He brought one for himself, let's be honest.
No, Ben, he's like, I brought you an Olympia, which was really rad. And I was like, but dude, if I drink that now, I'm going to puke.
But you drank a Sprite in Canada.
Yes.
Yeah?
So because we like, so Mike and my partner put a couple sodas in the cooler just for the drive or whenever. And like, and so we finally got shut down on all the possible things we could do in Canada. Like we went from like Emperor Face Plan A to like plans B, C, and D, and we're like somewhere around Plan F, and like, we're just getting shut down left and right from avalanche hazard, whether it's on the route or on the approach, and so we're just like hanging out, trying to figure out what to do, and we're like, okay, tomorrow we're just gonna go to the crag, fuck it, and so Micah, just like cracks open a Sprite. He's like, do you want some?
You know what you need is a good Sprite right now.
And I was like, yeah, I do.
Yeah,
so
that's funny.
drank Sprite because I was like, well, it's no like this discipline has been great.
Off the program, check.
Yeah, yep, off the program. Been off the program since I got done with the ultra, and that's been. But man, that was also cool. Like, so Susan, she's like, I'm gonna make this chocolate cake for when you get back, because either it's gonna be victory or consolation, right?
Yeah.
So I just didn't have any cake until I ran the ultra, and then I had cake like every day for a week. It was really good.
She's the best.
I love it so much. Man, that sucks to hear about the fail in Canada. So do you have a time like you want to go back? I'm sure.
Yeah. So the other, so typically the season is like early October, which is when we went this year.
Yeah.
Or like early May, and so Micah, so he's been guiding Denali for a while, but he's kind of done with that. So he's he does occasionally go to the Ruth Gorge. So if he lines up clients for the Ruth Gorge, then we'll probably punt to next fall. But if he doesn't get Ruth Gorge clients lined up for Alaska, then there's a good chance we will.
It's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, there's a good chance we'll watch conditions and just head up in May.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is like, okay, so like the aerobic fitness might not be as great when we get up there if we just go over winter with it, because man, it's so hard to stay aerobically fit in winter, at least for me. But we will come off of like being cold all the time.
I say like I stay aerobically fit through it. Yeah.
Doing
Okay.
well, so anyway, he and I, you know, he's a guide out in Uray. So we'll both be doing lots of ice and mix, like climbing and guiding all winter. And so we just sort of just roll that into May, like even if it's like, you know, 10 degrees out, it feels really warm at that point because you've been super cold all winter, which is really helpful because you just have to bring as much
10
insulation.
degrees is warm.
Well, like relatively speaking, yeah. You know, like if you've been guiding in 0 degrees, then like 10 degrees feels warm,
goodness.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I guess.
I mean, imagine if you walked outside right now, it's 55. You'd like be like
feels
shirtless.
so much better than like 19 the other day or whatever it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a chance that it happens in May, but I'm guessing he's going to get work in the Ruth Gorge, and so realistically, we might go back and try next fall.
See more of Derek DeBruin, Bear House Mountain Guiding on Instagram, Bear House Mountain Guiding website, and follow your personal Instagram.
For sure.
And you do talk about the link up here, the Ogden Peak.
Yeah, that's kind of, to me, that's
so.
kind of the end of the story. There's one more post coming that I'll probably put out.
There's a really gross toenail shot.
Yeah,
too.
sorry. Well, it's like on the Facebook, like the toenails after you do all the reading, but on Instagram, the photos
the
first
first
and the
thing you
reading
see.
second. And so I was like, whatever, we'll go with it.
It's hard to look at.
Sorry about the toenail shot. That's but it was
it's a necessary part of the
yeah,
of the
it's
deal.
a thing. Like I can show you my toe right now if you want.
No,
Like,
well, I think we're good. Podcast listeners can see it if they want.
Hold that up.
Yeah, is it growing back? Is it healing?
yeah,
a little?
it's like halfway growing back.
I lost
like,
one once. It was the most painful, but I lost it by sliding underneath the freezer door in a meat department, and it just like peeled it back.
Yeah, shit, dude.
Brutal.
That's pretty harsh.
You lost yours in a little more epic fashion.
It was a little, but it's it also like when it gets sort of bruised like that, and like you end up losing your toenail later. You know, like there's that time
It
between.
just sort of falls off.
Yeah, it's kind of pretty dead. So like it was not super painful. I was just doing the self-surgery thing. I don't know if you know about this thing called Balmer's Peak. So it comes from like computer science, like coding, like writing programming.
Okay.
And Balmer's Peak is this wonderful. No, you're gonna get real excited here in a second.
Todd does.
This
You said coding, I immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So it's this wonderful point where you're just inebriated enough that you're actually really creative and you write programs like way better. But if you go past that point, you're like your skill just drops off completely. Like you're just totally useless. And so I think it's really important for folks to know that if you're going to self-anesthetize using alcohol to then remove your toenails self-surgically, you got to find Balmer's Peak. Because if you go too far, things are going to get bad.
Yeah, don't screw it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to find Balmer's Peak.
Derek, thanks so much, man, for hanging out with us for a minute. Let's bust
I say we train for that.
Balmer's Peak.
Yep.
Balmer's Peak.
Just for everything.
Yes.
Just
No,
For the show,
just-
actually.
Yes,
We
you
should
should
hit
Balmer's Peak everything.
every show.
We could at least do the show.
I mean, hashtag Balmer's Peak for life.
for life, yeah. But I feel like Balmer's Peak only lasts about 20 minutes or something.
Oh yeah, it's really hard to hit.
Like
It's a pretty short window.
But
But
you gotta
if
find that, and I'm willing to do it.
you're willing to try,
Yeah.
Don't waste your mitochondria on Balmer's Peak either.
perfect.
Okay, Nordic Valley's open.
Well, real quick, thanks for all the sharing you've been doing online recently. You know, we've kind of been getting to know you. Like, how is that process? Do you enjoy doing that? Is that something? I mean, is it a deliberate thing? Is it? We've been, talking a little bit. I think about trying to reveal a little bit more about ourselves, over the course of the podcast and things like that. But I feel like I've gotten even closer to you.
Sure.
Through some of these things that you've been sharing.
Todd went straight shirts off, so we had to pull it back a little bit. But yeah.
So for
You made
me,
it weird. Thank you.
Yeah, mission success, Brandon. No, I like to write just in general, and I think writing helps me process. And so, like this is a big deal to me. Like I trained really hard. Like I was really disappointed. I was just trying to sort of make sense of it all. And so, and I've done similar things, just talking about like my friendships with other folks. Like if you scroll down my feed, like I have like a whole like 8 posts or something dedicated to my buddy Sam Latone, and so I think, when I think about social media, there's a number of studies that sort of demonstrate like when you get on social media, you feel worse about yourself because you only ever see the great stuff that you're like, only people only ever post like this sort of perfect shiny exterior. And
or the best sandwich.
Exactly, like whatever the
you
best.
Want to post the shitty sandwiches. That's
right.
What
Well, I guess, and so I guess my thinking was like, no, it's okay to post the shitty sandwich. That's real life. Like when I think about like what my feed sort of was looking like, or like what my Facebook looks like, it's like, oh, it's all these like climbing and skiing photos, which I do a lot of, right? But I also like hang out with my kid, and like we have like what amounts to a small farm in our backyard that I do work on, and like I love my wife and I have friends, and like there's all these other parts of life, and so yeah, I guess I'm just trying to make it okay for folks to be a little more authentic.
Well, we appreciate that.
Well, thanks. And yeah, well, I guess the other part to me is like if it's okay to be more authentic, it's also, I guess, more compelling. Like because I went to Canada and we failed hard, right? Like I mean, but that happens every day of my life, and so like this was just one particularly big moment, but yeah, we all fail all the time. And when you fail, you learn.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
Well, I was wishing I was at that level of fail, because that looked like a pretty fun time. So.
It was, I mean, like it was still a really cool trip. Like, I mean, frankly, like just being at the Canadian Rockies was amazing. Like those mountains are gorgeous. But yeah, so I think I'm just I guess just trying to be authentic with people and share those parts of me that I'm like, okay, yeah, I think that's reasonable to say. And like if people are gonna give me shit about it, like that's fine. Like
you didn't get any crap.
No, I really didn't. Like I did get a couple like, oh my god, that toe photo is gross. But
the toe photo was pretty bad,
and that was fair. I own that. I will own that. I debated it. I was like, well, I don't really have any other great photo for this particular chunk of the story, so
here it is.
I think that we're all just thankful that you didn't post any intestinal distress photos. So thank you for that.
No, Jesus, I was so bad.
You chose wisely.
I just finished cooking dinner, and Mike is like, I'll be right back, man. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, dude. Which I don't know if Michael wants me to share that.
Pre-dinner, even. Wow.
Such as it is, like now it's out there. So,
but it is. Well, such is life as well.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It happens sometimes. Like, and man, the first time I did the Cathedral Traverse in the Tetons, that climb was fueled pretty much entirely by Pepto-Bismol.
Oh,
it was terrible.
And on that note,
I threw up Pepto once. It was disgusting.
Yeah, we just kind of committed, and so we were back there, and I was like, well, sometimes you just end up shitting every hour on the hour for some reason, and you're like, not sure why, but you're like, I got to keep climbing, so Pepto-Bismol.
Good night.
This is the glamorous side of adventuring.
Sure.
Yeah, things that you don't see in the photos. You're like, but I'm like, that stuff happens. Like, and people still go send. It's fine.
It happens to Jimmy Chen as well.
I'm sure it does.
Everyone's
got to
have him in the news. In the news.